Hi. So I just did, I just had printed an article in Review West Michigan that acknowledged that in year 3 of my challenges that I had been trying to write a TED Talk. But if I'm honest, I never tried to actually write it. I just had like multiple inspirations that are like stored in like little recorders like this or in my phone. One of them I gave to my patrons on patreon.com/Jessica and the Rainbow. You can become a patron if you want to. I like shared with them a 7-minute long TED Talk idea ramble. So anyway, for a long time I've had this idea called, or for a TED Talk. Originally it was going to be called Creativity as Therapy. And then, oh dang it, I just realized I'm going to have to flag this as made for kids. This is not made for kids. I guess it's like, branding. When they say that if something has like a cartoon character on it, that you must be marketing towards kids, even though you were just trying to be cute. Well, whatever. I decided I'm going to make up my own TED Talk right now because I said in there that I did, or that I had tried. Anyway, what I'll do is in the links below, I'll post a bunch of links to things like YouTube videos that I've made that are just like TED Talks, where I get real preachy about creativity or personal approaches, like personal therapeutic methods. I have a whole like 11 episode show called Jessica and the Rainbow in Rainbow Land, Jitter in Rainbow Land, and those 11 episodes are all, kind of like my version of a TED Talk. I have a 7-series, I'll post this there too, a 7-series thing on how to become your authentic self. What else? There's more. But, I do TED Talkish things all the time, but just a little less structured. A lot less structured, see? I'm 2 minutes in. The TED committee would be like, get to the point. Just kidding. I don't know anything about the TED committee. Like, do whatever you do. I don't care. Anyway, and so now to begin the TED Talk called Creativity as Therapy. Hello. Wow, really nervous being here. Look at all of you. Whew. So I scripted this whole thing out. Oh, side note, I didn't script a thing. I'm going to improvise a pretend scripted thing so that I can feel like I did a TED Talk without doing the work of a TED Talk. I know, it's really stupid. I'm just being weird. Okay, back to the TED Talk. Here we go. Should I start over? Yes. Okay. Hello. Thanks for being here for my TED Talk. My very first TED Talk. Just kidding. I know you only usually get one. Okay. Are you going to keep interrupting? Yeah, probably. Okay. I'll try to get used to it. Okay. Thank you for coming to my very first TED Talk. My only TED Talk. I'm rambling already. Stick to the cards, Jessica. This is probably what would actually happen. This is me trying to let go of my dream of ever doing a real TED Talk, because I'm afraid that if I spent months trying to curate and craft something perfect, then I would just end up going off script anyway. You know it's true. Okay, let me go on. So I want to talk today about why I don't go to therapy. Sorry, I was promoted to one time by a thing that said you needed to make your TED Talk title more inflammatory for it to go viral. He didn't say it that way. This business plan, this marketing guy who wanted my money. No offense to him. We all want each other's money. Anyway, if we have a service or a thing we can offer. But he... So I was always going to use creativity as therapy, and the thing that I read made it sound like if your title's more inflammatory, like more clickbaity, that'll get people to click it, and then you can still say all the same things, but you just lead with that. So it was like why I'm anti-therapy or creativity as therapy. I don't even know. It was something weird like that. Or like how therapy has hurt me and how creativity fixed it, or something like that. But these things are kind of true. I would just never do that. I would never call it that. Although I might call this that because I think that's funny to get you to click it. Okay, moving on. So what I was saying was, I don't go to therapy anymore. I did. And therapy was very helpful on some things. Even more helpful was meeting therapists and becoming friends with them because they offered me therapy speak ideas without the relationship dynamic of an authority figure and I don't have hands. Thank you. You're welcome. The authority dynamic of you're my authority and I am the weak person needing help and paying you money to help me. That's not what therapy says it is. Some people really need therapy. I really needed therapy. I did. At one point in time, it did really help. I'm done. Go on. Okay, so yes, at one point in my life when I was in deep crisis, therapy was helpful, but if I'm very honest, what was even more helpful were hotlines. Because when you're in deep crisis, sometimes you don't want the through line of the same person holding you accountable to the ways you're telling the story, because the ways that you're telling the story that are partly fictional might be saving your life. I believe that. It was my experience anyway. So, what therapy often doesn't tell you is that in order to dig into your past, you have to give up your future. So, in my case, I was on a trajectory that was working for me and was honoring the decades of work I had put into a certain path. And because I pressed pause on that in order to pursue things in therapy, a lot of what could have been my future sort of fell apart. And so in order to explore your past, you might have to give up a lot of things that you were headed towards. You might head towards new things. That happened to me. You might refine and realize the things that you actually want to do, in which case therapy can be very helpful. Or so can a person who's just really in touch with therapy type thoughts. So I had been pursuing very heavily things that were very ambition oriented without really looking at deep down. I really wanted to be just playing shows in little coffee shops, and I envied someone like Phoebe on Friends who could just get up and make up a silly song in front of her friends at a coffee shop and feel proud of who she was, because 10 years ago that was not who I was, or 15, I don't know, however long ago it was, at all. I wouldn't play shows ever, or once every 5 years or something. From as early as middle school I would try again and then get scared. So in some ways, therapy can jumpstart or restart your whole life towards your authentic self. But it can be very painful, very derailing, and you can kind of lose a path that you were on, which can be a good thing, but can also be something that causes, yes, this is the controversial part, can be something that causes as many, if not more, problems than it solves. And that's what happened in my life. Vouch. Vouch. I just wanted them to speak because I saw them there, but I don't know why they said vouch. Because they're vouching for that being what happened. Yes, I understand. Well, I was about to take over. Sorry. Continue. You have the floor. This is your TED Talk. We are at 8 minutes, but you really started at minute 3. This is how it would go, right? Yeah. So it builds up like a story, like a premise, but then you kind of have to get to the point for something that's relatable to others, not just tell your own story. Yes. Okay. So, that being said, therapy has a certain purpose, but sometimes I believe that we believe that therapy for life will solve everything, but it's important to realize it's a fairly new thing, and that before there was therapy, there was creativity. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry. Before there was therapy, there was creative practices. There was making art. There was writing poetry. There was going off into the woods for 2 years. All of those famous writers from was it the Transcendental era? I would do research if I was really doing this. Yeah, I know. I was an English minor. And okay. well, this feels important. I was an English minor, so I should know these things. So yeah, you were just going to shame yourself. I was trying to save you from shame. Sorry. All right. So, going on. See, this is me being creative and weird for no reason. I didn't know what I was going to make right now, but I thought it might be funny to make a TED Talk without the TED committee approving and then label it as a TED Talk and keep it roughly in 20 minutes and try to say something profound and helpful in that amount of time, including saying something with the thing itself. So I'm saying things, but also I hope the thing, this structure that I'm making and dropping into the world, says something just by existing, which is that someone like me is not meant to do things in a formulaic way that has rules and regulations and structures. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for how my brain works. It doesn't work for how my creativity works. It doesn't work for how my particular brand of, I don't know, seeing the world, thinking about things, thinking about ideas, taking things apart, break it apart, make it better, that kind of philosophy. It doesn't work for me if the systems that are what they are asking me to do that. They're asking me to be myself, break it apart, make it better, share something profound, but then they're telling me the structure I'm allowed to do it in. That does not work for me. Hasn't worked for me in the music scene with, well, but your sound needs to be like this, or you have to release in this particular way. You have to make sure that you find the PR company and then do this, and then do this, and then do this. It's like, do you want me to be inspiring and to be fully myself, or do you want me to fit a formula? Because it can't be both. I mean, it can. But anyway, creativity as therapy is saying, like, really be creative. Like, really create what you believe in. And in my case, it comes off fairly defiant at times. Oh, sorry, I really took the floor. All right, well, that's because this is me. I mean, whatever. Let's change people. Okay. No, I'm not feeling you right now. Very cute, though. I'd also just think there'd be rights issues. Who knows? No. All right. I'll just put it on myself. Who cares? So, yeah. Creativity as therapy means that you're in charge. Not the rules, not the systems, not the beliefs of other people, not the structures that people are comfortable with and already used to. Creativity as therapy means, what do you think is the problem? And what do you think is the solution? And maybe the solution is just taking a notepad and just scribbling like crazy for a year. I don't know. Like, I had some really dark artistic drawings. I was going to say art, and then I realized I don't feel comfortable calling my doodles art, but whatever. It's just, and yes, I could go to therapy for that. Yes, that's shame, and yes, that's an internalized thing, but I understand all that already. And all of my emotional shifts have occurred through, like, an emotional shift is very different than a mental awareness. And so all of my shifts, all of the ways I've become more fully myself have happened very sacredly and privately. And that's where therapy wasn't the solution for me. Because if a therapist thought I needed to do X, Y, or Z, but I knew I needed to live in some deep and heavy forgiveness of myself or others for my own sanity and for my own growth, then that's what was right. Because that's my inner compass. And I know that maybe a therapist is supposed to do X, Y, or Z, but the key here is that a therapist is just another human. They're a human trained to help you with you, but they don't know everything about you. And you do, and don't, but creativity kind of does, because creativity unblocks the flow that you've blocked. Like, if you were someone who enjoyed coloring or writing poems or stories or making up songs or literally anything as a child, as young as like 3 or 4, because everybody did it when they were kids to some degree. And then at different ages, we all block it. Now, I kept mine longer because I was kind of a delusional flight of fancy child. Or I was just very in my head. School was great for me because it was the teacher and it was me and it was the ideas and the projects. And I was in my head. But once I woke up to social things, the same way a lot of kids did younger than me, I didn't wake up to a lot of them until I was like in middle school. And I noticed that being in my world caused me social problems. And I've rambled about this before. not very TED Talk, but I could give you the synopsis is, there were a lot of school-wide concerts that were all about me. And my friends first liked that, it seemed, because it was cool that I wrote so many songs at a young age. And then they stopped liking it because it was probably not enough about them. Or because it was just annoying. Like, why was I getting all of that attention? Or why was it... Or maybe my songs were too many soft feelings and not what people felt like listening to. Who cares? It's fine. But that's when I woke up to social issues being a reality. And for me, that's when I started blocking myself. That's why I bring that up. So for me, once I realized that my creativity and my joy and my love of just being myself and creating things and writing songs, and I'm leaving an important part out. The school-wide concerts came because a friend of ours passed away, and I wrote a song for it, and then the school wanted to have me share that song and other songs I wrote. And so it began as something loving and communal, and then it kind of turned into schools that I was at just wanting to make it all about my songs. And I mean, that's what fame is. So things that happens to people sometimes. But in my case, that was the first time that I had an intense awareness that me shining my light could actually either annoy others or put others out. And so that was when I first had my awareness that I should block myself. I think most people do it for much smaller things. I think most people do it if it's just first grade and they drew a drawing and there's this really beautiful, and the teacher was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, Megan. And then their friend, the teacher's like, oh, good job. And then, like, some people are very sensitive at a young age to social things, which I don't think I was. I don't think I was aware of that kind of stuff at a young age. And so some kids, I think that's why they start to block themselves, because they don't want the other kids to feel bad if there is that disparity. So being blocked creatively, emotionally, intellectually, like, it's a natural human response to living in a social world. But the reason that I like to teach creative unblocking is because then once you block it, now you've lost touch with a part of yourself. Like, yes, you don't have to go be an a-hole again. Not that you even were when you were in first grade. You just misinterpreted the situation with your child brain. But still, say you unblocked, you don't have to go be an a-hole and be like, hey, everything I make is better than everyone else's. Like, I actually, about myself, no matter how much stuff I make, I actually don't believe that. I've been making these compilation albums for In the Clouds, our house venue, and it's 126 tracks of music from so many different artists, and I don't think mine are the best at all. At all. I love the songs that I write. They are deeply meaningful to me, and they have value to some people. And sometimes, if I'm in a good place, I can focus on the things I like about my own work, and then also the things I like about other people's work. But if I'm in a bad place, I can be like, oh, mine sound like X, and this person's sounds like Y. And then, and thankfully I know better than to, like, get all hierarchical and say, but at least mine is better than so. Like, I don't do that anymore. But, like, that's what creativity triggers for a lot of people, is this sort of jockeying for position. I was just saying to my boyfriend that I really don't like competition. I grew up in, like, 10 piano competitions a year. That's the thing I always say, but it was probably only like 6, but it felt like 10. Anyway, it might have only been 3, but it felt like 10. And it was flute competitions too, and it was just so intense to always be trying to be the most absolute perfect thing. But think of, like, when you think of perfect, like, when you think of art that you love, do you think of the word perfect? Or do you think, like, compelling, interesting, like weird melted clocks on a tree? Do you think perfect? Or do you think of perfect for, like, a painting that you would see that's, like, been digitally generated for, like, hotel rooms across the nation, which nothing against those, but, like, or something that is just so crafted to suit all that in a way it suits nobody. In a way it makes nobody happy because it's just being created with the intention of perfection. Creativity is not perfection. It's the opposite. I didn't know anything I was going to say for this TED Talk. but I figured it'd be my same usual themes. Creativity is a thing that flows on its own. Like you're the mouthpiece and it's the voice. Like you're the pen. You're the casing of the pen. You're not the ink. The ink is itself. The ink, you're in charge of it. You're holding the pen, but like what flows out of you is very mysterious. And that's what creativity really is. So the biggest thing that I always say to people when they're feeling creatively blocked, and this is why creativity has been therapy for me, is that I read this a long time ago. I would like to give credit to exactly who it is. It's probably Julia Cameron. But, well, let's have these guys act it out. Okay. So, if you feel blocked and you're trying to like write a song or make a painting, but you feel really just blocked, you should be aware that what you might be trying to do is create. And as you're creating, you might be judging what you create. Like say you started to draw a flower and you immediately go, that's bad. And then what if you start to scribble it out? What message does that send to your creativity? Do you think your creativity wants to come back out to play? Nope, couldn't figure it out. Nope, not at all. So, the way to send a message to your creativity that it is welcome, that it is valid, that it is wanted, that it's allowed to come out and play is to say to yourself, I will not be an editor while my creativity is flowing. And an editor is someone who's scribbling it out and saying that's not good. So when your creativity is flowing, when you are feeling flow, and flow is usually just joy, enjoyment of the process. Thank you. When you're feeling flow, you just draw. You doodle the flower. You don't even have the thought that isn't good. Now you may not be able to get to that just yet, but that's the goal. And so you're drawing, you don't scribble anything out, or you're writing lines, you're writing lyrics, you're writing sentences of your story. You don't scribble anything out. Nothing. And you let it just be what it is. And then later, at a much later date, which could just be an hour later, but it really depends on how easily you can switch between headspaces. Then you go back to the raw clay that is that clay, or that notebook full of stuff, doodles, words, anything. And then you don't expect yourself to write anything new. This is equally important. You don't expect yourself to replace the bad lines, but you do allow yourself to edit. So you start scribbling out, changing, crossing out. Oh, I didn't need to do that. And then when you feel that you have edited out everything that you love or don't love, you could try to immediately start replacing it or rewriting new things, but that's going back to the play part of your brain. Most people mix these two processes up, and it's where writer's block comes from. And I both read this in a book, and I've tested this theory out for over 10 years, and it's been 100% true for me. And this fake TED Talk was inspired by the article where I just said something that I did not read in a book, but it's come from my experience, which is, think of creativity like play. You cannot play with your toys and clean them up at the same time. That's my message for you. And how is that therapy? Good point. How is that creativity as therapy? Because what I believe is the creative process, this is something made by my friend Elizabeth, the creative process is mysterious. Why, how would I logically know or could describe in a therapy session why making art like this would help me, would help my inner child, would help my heart, would help me heal or forgive somebody, would help me move forward through a breakup, would help me reinvent my life, would help me understand what I love and who I love, and also how to draw boundaries, other than literally drawing boundaries. What if you doodle things and you keep putting yourself inside of a bubble? Maybe that's you learning how to draw boundaries. I have no idea. Or what if the way you write songs is helping you learn to find your voice? Like, these terms we talk about in therapy are literal, actual things. Find your voice. Go do it. Go sing songs and find your voice. How does your voice work? Or draw boundaries, physically draw them. That's art. That's art. That's music. That's poetry. That's been around since ancient civilizations. Therapy has not. There have been wise leaders who have helped us through things since forever. I guess they have tons of different names, like maybe shamans or mystics. But some of that is in books as well. Like, what if you're a poet who's also very drawn to like spiritual poetry or emotional healing poetry? Like, these are all valid mediums. And the challenge that I had in therapy, and maybe I just didn't have a good therapist, because later I did have a friend who was a therapist, and she was one of the best people in my life ever and helped me through so many things. But therapy is one tool. Hotlines are one tool if you're in crisis. And then over here are a bunch of other tools. Make up songs, make up stories, make up poems, make art, create. And as you create, you allow things to flow. And however you are feeling blocked can start to move and can start to come out. I mean, it's almost like, how could you even go to therapy unless you know how to unblock yourself and unblock these things, unblock these beliefs, unblock these ways that you are limiting yourself? So I have turned my life into a giant therapy session just by creating all the time. I have whole albums that it doesn't matter if they're fulfilling to other people. They were a moment, they were a catalyst point for me. Not my album Catalyst. That one was more intentional and more curated and more crafted back before I understood the way that art and music and songwriting can be our own therapy, which is how music is for me now. And I use it like, it's like being like a phoenix, but like being a phoenix all the time, over and over again. Every time I fixate on one idea or way of being, if it starts to not serve me, I allow the music to change it, and then it flows, and then it rewrites itself, and then that album becomes a turning point. And I have so many albums now like that, and so many creative moments and experiences that are like that, that it's what I believe in now. And if I tried to explain all of it to a therapist, that would be way too many decades worth of stuff. And I have done that before, but like sometimes then you can get lost in the details, or lost in whether or not that therapist can remember all your details, or if they took notes, or you could get lost in them pathologizing you, which I have been on medication before, but I couldn't write songs. So that was about 2 years when I was in a deep crisis. But currently, I don't take meds, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm saying currently, for where I'm at with my own healing, I don't. But that does mean that my life and my creativity and my energy is very big, and it takes up a lot of space. And a lot of people don't want to take up a lot of space, and they don't want to be this intense. And so there are ways that sometimes therapy or pathologizing ourselves can actually add to the blocking us in. And creativity and flow can actually ruin whatever that was that they were trying to maybe block in. And so if you feel bigger than life, or you feel conflicts about therapy or about all of these things, like, you're not crazy. This is just, therapy is new science. There are so many ways to help and be helped. I know I'm not crazy. I know that what I am is just very, very intense and specific, like a very specific and weird point of light. And you might be too. And the more you get to know what your point of light is, the more you may come to feel like yourself, and that may give you great joy and a great feeling of usefulness in the world. Even if you're barely helping anybody, becoming more and more yourself helps yourself. And there may be a few people who appreciate it so deeply, and there may be so many others that find it confusing or annoying or derailing for their life systems and beliefs. But I think the secret is, if you're really comfortable with your own way of approaching life, then other people's way won't really bother you very much. At least that's been true for me. Thank you for helping. I didn't really make do anything at the end because this construct got a little weird. And see, I'm like 10 minutes too long for a TED Talk. Plus, I didn't script that, so I don't know. If I had to, and I sat down with note cards and I tried to edit all of that, it would take me like 6 months. And that's 6 months of albums and, I mean, maybe not 6 months, but what if it took me like 40 hours? That's 40 hours I could spend writing like 4 more albums. I don't know. TED committee, if you want me to do one, I'll do one, but it just might be very rambly and weird. You just have to cut me off. But I would try. I just think that's not the best use of my time. Thanks for watching my pretend TED Talk. I hope there was something helpful for you in here. I know my thoughts are a little controversial, but it seems like TED committees like that. I don't know. I've spent too much of my life worrying about upsetting anyone with what I believe. I never wanted to be insulting to anybody, ever. And I wanted to be liked by all. And these are completely insane goals. You won't be liked by all. You will be something specific the more you become yourself. And the more you become yourself, the more it'll be clear to people who don't agree with you what you are. And that will give them cause to dislike you if you are something that they don't like. So we can hide in neutral. We can hide in indecision, non-definition, or we can become very fully ourselves. And it's a risk. Creativity is a risk. Creating is risky. You could be judged negatively. You could be judged positively and then envied, like the first grader who had the drawing and then realized that them being complimented made them feel bad for their friend. It's a risk. It's a risk to shine your light, whatever your light is. And it might not even be the traditional arts. It might be sports. It might be math. It might be anything. Literally anything that lights your fire and gives you passion. Literally anything. Any topic is creativity if it flows from you with joy. And all of those things can be judged or envied. So, build up your courage and become yourself. That's my message to you. Bye.